All right, guys, thanks so much for taking the time and listening to me present. It's a pleasure to be here and really excited to speak to you about the small-ish but mighty AI team we have at BMO and some of the work we're doing. And specifically what I want to talk about is how we've sort of organized ourselves to drive transformation at a very large traditional organization, right? And this talk is going to be non-technical because I'm not a technical person myself. And I'll get into my background a bit later. But I hope you enjoy and hope you can take some lessons from our growing pains in this team. All right, so first of all, I want to start by introducing what data analytics and AI mean for BMO and what we're trying to get out of it. But when we first started this team, and it's a pretty young team, although there's legacy talent that came from the old data team, we always thought about AI as something that integrates with other technologies, but the end goal of AI is always to be a core enabler of our purpose, which is to boldly grow the good in business and life. And that's sort of the mandate that came from our CEO. So it's about being bold and driving innovation, growing good business, but also ensuring that we have an impact on our community. And that's, some of the initiatives that we're doing and some of these talks are part of that. And then what are we trying to do in terms of AI is obviously we're doing better and more measurable business results for our customers and our businesses. We want to ensure that the way we do things balances risk with growth and innovation, right? So we want to be responsible, but we view AI as a key enabler of all the transformation that's happening across BMO. Obviously, we think big, and we're solving some major problems, which I'll go into shortly. But we take a very product and MVP-led approach to what we do to ensure agility and a fail-fast methodology. We're always trying to collaborate with each other and other groups in BMO. As you're in the field, what you're going to start to realize is that a lot of machine learning capabilities are reusable, especially in a big organization such as BMO. So if we think about things like segmentation, things about next best action, we're building our assets in a way that scale well, and we're actively driving that across our lines of businesses. And finally, last but not the least, we're doing some really exciting work, and we are solving very interesting problems that go across climate change. Obviously I mentioned customer segmentation and next best action, cash flow predictions, et cetera, which are winning awards across the industry. And, we want to help upskill AI talent and be a destination choice, right? So what does this team consist of? This team really, there's a lot of very technical people who come from very technical backgrounds, like we have the Harvard PhDs and the Amazon data scientists, et cetera. But we've started to complement that with product managers and consultants like myself, right? So, I'll go into a bit later about how that works, but that's been working really well for us. Most of our people come from, an academic and tech industry background with sort of a background in financial services as well. And we think there's a lot of opportunity that exists at the intersection of data, consulting frameworks, financial services, and AI. And we're working hard to, unlock this value. And if you think about our past experience, it goes like all the way across from academia at U of T and Waterloo to myself at Monitor Deloitte to, the tech companies like Shopify's and the Amazons, et cetera. So this is where I want to spend most of our time in this conversation. So like I mentioned, we're focused on very interesting problems that largely can't be solved without deep learning. An example of that, for example, is the cash flow prediction solution that we've now integrated into our digital apps. And if you look it up, we've won a number of awards for it. And that essentially analyzes past transactional data for our retail customers and provides them insights on how and when they are predicted to have a short flow in their cash flow. And as you're aware, that's very difficult to do and pretty impossible to do efficiently without deep learning. And it helps our customers understand their financial lives better, but also avoid predatory offers and lending organizations that might exist in the market who charge interest rates, beyond what a traditional bank would charge, and really get our customers into sort of a very destructive debt cycle, is how I call it. So if you think about our mission statement of boldly growing the good in business and life, that's an example of how we're driving business, but we're also helping our customers drive a good outcome. So how do we approach AI-driven transformation at BMO? Really, what we found is that traditional AI teams tend to view data science in isolation, which means that we might build a great, phenomenal model with the best F score in the world, but it really has either minimal business impact because we're not solving the right problem, or it's grounded in a suboptimal user experience, which means that there's a lack of adoption. So what we try and do is we take a very cross-functional approach to the problem that combines a few things. First is strategy. So I'm actually fully non-technical. I come from a strategy consulting background with Monitor Deloitte. I spent 3 years there, and then progressively moved into AI product management. And we find that that's a really important skill set because that helps us not only design solutions and prioritize opportunities that help us become market leaders, but as you're aware, in a large organization and a matrixed organization, it's really important to interface with executive stakeholders and rapidly understand and prioritize, okay, where are we going to get the most bang for our buck with the solution? And then prioritize among key strategic levers to quickly design and scope a solution. Hand in hand with that, we actually have a product management function. And this is absolutely critical. I genuinely feel, if you think about the big tech companies, the product management function is probably what's led to their most of their success, right? So my job is to work very closely with our product management teams to take a human-centered design approach to machine learning products and to build products that actually solve the user problem and is grounded in experience that people want to use. It also means that it helps us identify a lot of the dumb math that need to go with the solution and the data required for that to build a holistic solution that all our users will need and will solve the right business problem. And obviously grounding that, we have created and curated a world-class team of data scientists and ML developers who obviously have the very deep technical expertise. They come from places like Amazon, they come from places like JP Morgan and places like some of our other competitors, Shopify, academia, but they also know how to think business and work cross-functionally with the strategy and product management functions to build a true AI product. And last but not the least, we need that financial services expertise. As people are aware, financial services is very different from, a retail consumer tech company, right? We're heavily regulated. Things, it's like the maxim isn't move fast and break things. It's move, diligently and responsibly to ensure that we don't let our customers down. So, and also it's a rapidly evolving space, right? So if you think about the evolution that's happening in Canada and the US, in the US and the UK, the Canadian market is 5 to 10 years behind to things like open banking. And it's really important for us to ground our solutions in that context and ensure we're moving towards the right disruptive solutions that will position us well in the market. This structure that we've built is, we think it's great and has worked well, but it's also very painful, right? So if you think about a designer working with a data scientist, that's not, it's very left-brained versus very right-brained. And it's not always easy, but we found that while it's difficult and sometimes we want to tear our hair out collectively, it's worked really well because we have complementary skill sets that help us define and design and wow businesses and actually build solutions that drive true AI transformation, which means that we have sustained transformative outcomes. We achieve it in a very short amount of time because of our MVP and product thinking, as well as our strategic prioritization. And crucially, we actually invest relatively little compared to the outcome we're driving. And because this is a public forum and I can't get into specific dollar amounts, but what I can say is that over the last year, if we think about a 5-year benefit case, we've paid for our team multiple times over just through the initiatives we've done in a year, and we plan on keeping going. And a big part of why we can drive that benefit is because of the structure.
So I've got a question for you there. How do you handle trust-related AI issues like model explainability and transparency and data privacy?
Right. I think that's an excellent question. And it was actually part of the extended version of this presentation that I had to cut down because of time constraints. So there's a few ways we handle that. One is we've created an enterprise-wide trustworthy AI framework that guides across the criteria that you mentioned. So, there's part of that is privacy, explainability, fairness, reliability. Those are our four frameworks, four elements of our framework. And we have specific issues and we have specific risk tiering for each solution that, we define as the level of rigor required for each of those elements. So an example of that is, for example, from a privacy point of view, if you're doing a marketing use case versus a pricing use case, the tiers might be different for privacy. So depending on what the risk tiering is across those 4 dimensions, based on very structured questions, we then have a model validation team that helps assess each of these risks for each of the solutions. So if that helps. So we prioritize the criteria by the use case, and then we align the right personnel to ensure that all of these checks and balances are in place, so that we're not on the wrong side of any of it.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks so much for that.
Yeah.
We have another question from Philip. He said, how large is your team and group? What's the reporting structure there?
Yeah. So broadly at BMO, we have decentralized analytics functions at all of our and AI functions at all of our different lines of businesses. But then we have the central EDAI team, which I'm part of. The EDI team, I think it's between 150 to 200 people overall. But in terms of how the AI COE is structured is we have directors of machine learning and then myself in the consulting division, and then we have the product management team. And overall, I would say we're around 40 to 50 data scientists and then 20 to 30 everyone else, if that helps.
That's a sizable team you guys have got there.
Yeah, we're fortunate.
All right, we got a question from Jerome as well. He said, when did your company start working on deep learning models?
So that's a great question. It's very difficult for me to answer because I joined a year ago and the organization is very big. But when have we consciously dedicated time and investment to building deep learning based solutions? I would say perhaps, and commercializing it, perhaps a year and a half to 2 years ago, and a year and a half ago is when some of our deep learning gurus really joined the team. So we've been working on it for a while.
Nice one. Yeah, I know there's 2 banks in particular, TD and RBC, who have kind of internal, I think Borealis and Layer 6 AI.
Yeah.
Did BMO, how do you guys kind of split that up? Do you have an internal team like that as well?
Yeah. I think that's a phenomenal question. So if you think about it as a spectrum of the way, these organizations can be built, on one side of the spectrum, you can have sort of, hey, do your own, you're a startup, Layer 6 or Borealis, or I'm not saying that's how they operate, but do your own thing, do business development on your own and see if see if someone buys the solutions you build, right? Whereas on the other side, you can take a very deep consulting type approach, right? Where you're embedded in the business, you're talking to them every day, and then what you hear from the business actually defines what you build. And like, I would say we're on the right-hand side of that spectrum. So not to say that we don't have the creativity to build technical, very deep functional technical solutions to the problems, but we're laser focused on the business need and the business outcome. And that's where the consulting side really helps, right? Like, we're ensuring that everything that we build solves a real business problem. And that's why, like, some of what we do is interesting. And that's not to say that business problems are boring. Like, we're doing a project right now in climate change, right? And I think that's super interesting, right?
Yeah,
and
totally.
AI use case you don't think about.
Great, thanks so much for that. We got a few questions there for you as well. So we got one from Anthony, who is also presenting later tonight. So he said, "Are you working on a single platform toolset, or are different departments allowed to use their preferred technology stack?"
Yeah, like, more often than not, we do have the flexibility. Again, like, there are certain limitations, right? So if your end solution is going to be deployed in a certain environment, you have to cater to that, right? But outside of certain constraints like that, which would probably be 20% of the cases, like, we have a lot of freedoms for sort of developer freedom to choose whatever tool that they want.
Very good. And we got a couple more questions there. Actually, this is the last one from Asim. He said different ML models have different accuracy, but somehow compromise on efficiency and accuracy. How do you proceed for a better ML model?
I think that's a great question, but I have to go back to, like, it's similar to the risk sharing question, right? Like, you have to ensure that your solution is fit for purpose. So some solutions are not real time, right? So what I mean by that is, let's say we're doing a certain use case where we only need predictions to be refreshed every week or every couple of weeks, versus like a solution that's on our digital app that has to be refreshed, maybe every day based on the transactions volumes that's going through your account. So, and we have to make conscious trade-offs across modeling techniques to ensure that the solution is fit for purpose.
Nice one. Thanks for that, Asim. And we got a question from Siddharth. He said, do all data scientists in your team, are they mostly coders, or are they from math backgrounds?
That's an excellent question. And the funny thing is, it really depends on, even within our data science team, we have different directors who have teams underlying them. And we have a managing director that came from Amazon, who comes from a computer science background. And we find that underneath him, most of the developers are coders, and obviously everyone's a coder, but like, they lean towards the computer science side of the problem. And then we have a very hardcore data scientist that came from like a financial services background. And I've seen that people on his team tend to come from a math or technical or engineering background. So yeah, I think we have both, and like, there's different lenses to the problem that we take and we solve.